I was noticing a large number of people on X, the letter formerly known as Twitter. People were talking about Joe Biden, kind of just doubting these images we've seen of him. And I was asking, is somebody using visual effects and artificial intelligence to make it seem like Joe Biden is all fine and dandy, healthy, talking? I don't know. It seems quite suspicious. I wanted to show people this. Totally improvised, busted, kludged together, hacked. Very actually reminiscent of the campaign itself. Sloppy, ugly, thrown together at the last minute. Unconvincing. That's ridiculous. But I wanted to talk about this speech that Joe Biden gave last night. Everybody's noticed that his watch was set for, I think 6:13 was the time that I heard. I wondered, was that supposed to have some significance? 6:11 was the time the shots were fired at Donald Trump, wasn't it? So I don't know anything about that. I was just evaluating it from the standpoint of, is that actually Joe Biden sitting there reading a script, or was anything at all done to enhance that, to further convince you that Joe Biden is a credible commander-in-chief of the United States, which I don't think he is. So just right there, starting with that, we have good reason to be suspicious of these people. They sort of lie to us all the time, present nonsense on the news. They're giving you this conclusion after basically no investigation that Thomas Crooks was killed on the roof of the American Glass Research Company. Wow, look at how quickly this building is coming together. It's always sirens, huh? This was the tennis place and a supermarket. It looks like it's becoming a gigantic, I don't know what. But we'll talk about Crooks and the Donald Trump assassination attempt tonight with John Cullen. People can see that. Become a sponsor if you aren't already on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Thanks to everybody who sponsors the show. I couldn't do this work without you. And when we were evaluating those Max Urich photos, YouTube totally censored that video. They put some kind of age restriction on there. And see, then the problem is for people who were trying to watch on Subscribestar and Patreon and Substack, see, those sites are essentially like a make-your-own website that also processes credit cards and controls, membership things and whatever. But you got to host the videos from somewhere else. So that's part of the reason why it's more economical for people to subscribe on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, because that's also a video hosting, like a YouTube replacement. So it does all of that under one roof. It's a great, even for free, if you check that out. It's become the biggest collection of Crowdsource the Truth legacy content on the internet. And it's so sad that David Hawkins is not with us anymore. He would be so interested in all of this and also interesting to talk to. But let's just discuss this Joe Biden. Before I show those videos, I want to share a concept with people that I'm not sure if everybody knows about or not. This comes from the world of robotics, and if you're, get in the comments and tell me if you know about the uncanny valley. Have people ever heard of that? Do you know what that is? Let's just get run over by a Mercedes. Do it in style if you're going to do it. But I don't know if people have ever heard of the uncanny valley. It's a term that comes from the world of robotics, and it basically describes human interfacing with robotic, systems. And it is based on the premise that people generally respond positively to cute and funny blinking light. C-3PO and R2-D2 are the best example. They're essentially, from a cinematic standpoint, they're like the Laurel and Hardy of robots, right? but no one is confusing either of those things for a human. And so the idea is, when humans interact with these, it's fun and it's cute when something that looks like a rolling garbage can expresses human emotion, make a joke or save his friends from the garbage compactor. You know, and this uncanny valley, it can apply to other things as well. Animation. I don't know if people remember, there was some Tom Hanks movie, I forget what it's called, Polar Express. And the movie is about Tom Hanks. It's like a Christmas movie, and Tom Hanks, it's animated, computer animated. Tom Hanks is the train conductor, and it's all these little kids going, I guess, to the North Pole on this train. And it was one of the first uses of motion capture, where cameras point at actors and their faces drive the facial activity of an animated character on screen. And because the technology was so new, this was maybe 2009, because the technology was so new, people were somewhat creeped out by that. I don't know if you remember this movie, but it's like the little kids, they didn't blink frequently enough. The point is, if you don't look like an actual cartoon, your brain starts sending you these signals that, hey, this is a real person, but they're kind of like exhibiting the characteristics of a corpse, not blinking frequently enough. You're subliminally, subconsciously rather, detecting a really large number of subtle cues that you would normally get from interacting with a human. And so this is why, when you're looking at R2-D2 or C-3PO, you know, R2-D2, you don't even have a nose. You don't expect the same kind of emotional response from a thing like that, you know, talking trash can, as you would from this like rubberized face of this woman. That's the Sophia robot, which, you know, they would tell you it has 34 muscles or things in the face to make it like, make all kinds of weird expressions. But I mean, a lot of people look at that and it's just creepy. So that is basically the uncanny valley. And it's like another cartoon analogy, you know, Toy Story or whatever. When that stuff is managed properly and somebody who understands what this is all about, like I don't think too many people left the movie theater with the creepy Tom Hanks train Christmas movie feeling too emotionally moved. But you might even remember like movies like Toy Story or something, where you can kind of choke up over the relationship between Mr. Potato Head and a talking telephone, if that's done correctly. So there are a lot of different disciplines that come into play to achieve what it is that I'm talking about. So let's look at some of the media that we've been presented with. So the first thing we had is Joe, first of all, goes missing for 5 days. And I mean, he's the president of the United States. So that right there is incredibly suspicious. So anybody who's like, oh, this is ridiculous, you know, anyone who says this is ridiculous conspiracy theory, I don't think you really have a basis to say that, because what's a ridiculous conspiracy theory is almost everything that we've been told for the past 3.5 years from the Biden-Harris misadministration and the news and everything. But anyway, I saw this. I actually want people to listen to this, and then we'll talk about it. There's no sound here in the beginning, but just listen.
She's dropped out of the race, sir.
How are you feeling about Harris's campaign?
Can Harris beat Trump?
Can Harris beat Trump, Mr. President?
So I'm just curious, what did people notice there? I won't play it again because people can just roll the video back, but what I don't know what the source of that video exactly is. I think I first saw it maybe on Twitter. Is this? I just came across it. It was coming from some. I think this is the right one here. I think it was posted maybe by even the Trump campaign. So I don't know. No, that's not it. It must be this one. I don't know where. Well, that was I should have just let that play. This is another good piece of media about Joe, where this just came out, I think, this morning. There was a photograph from the White House where it shows the family, you know, having this whole emotional moment. But the thing is, it was so low res, and almost everybody has up-resed it. They're looking at his ear. It's like, is this the same Joe? So just, I mean, think about the different ways if this isn't Joe. I'm saying visual effects and artificial intelligence. Well, how would that be done? There's a very well-known visual effect technique, in addition to what I was talking about before with facial motion capture, which is used all the time now, by the way, and like anything, an expert and an artist at using that's one of these things that you need to be both a technician and an artist, because it's a highly complicated skill to master. But once you know it, and you can exert your own artistry on it, maybe you're the guy who notices, or woman who notices the subtleties and puts the right amount of blinking and just knows how Joe happens to look around a room when he's operating. I mean, that's what I'm saying. There's acting, there's direction, there's animation skill, there's all this different stuff. But I think people have seen enough logical anomalies and visual anomalies in some of the things we've seen with Joe that this is a reasonable question to ask. Now, additionally, I was watching the video. I'm not going to play segments of the actual speech because just walking around out here, people are going to analyze that from now until Joe is irrelevant, so next week, I guess. But the point is, when you're watching it on YouTube or even cable television, you're getting some form of a digital transmission that's being encoded and decoded, and sometimes your cable operator will transcode it to be compatible with their systems, and there's a lot of different artifacts and digital compression things that can be introduced that change the way things look. So you can't always make a definitive determination from just looking at a video on the internet. You know, we weren't there in the room. But if you do go back and look at that Joe Biden speech, there's a couple of other things, and this comes to direction, production, design. When the speech begins, I noticed this right away, and I found it incredibly odd. You hear a phone ringing, like someone there on the soundstage left their phone on. And I'm not saying that couldn't happen, but that's like one of the most anomalous things. That doesn't happen. This is the White House. It's a soundstage. You're telling me they don't have professional people? You got the phone ringing? It struck me as so odd that I would say it is equally likely that that was someone accidentally leaving their phone on, as it was an element that was inserted through a process called Foley. Foley is a sound design method where you've seen these artists with the half coconuts and like clunk, 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 and they're making the sounds of a horse trotting, or they have a box filled with sand and they'll put on different shoes and walk through the sand and record all that, and they'll have a big screen up there and they're watching, you know, and as the guy lights his cigarette, which you never hear a sound when somebody draws on a cigarette. You could be in the most silent room in the world, but in a dramatic movie, when somebody lights a cigarette, it sounds like a campfire raging. So there's a Foley artist who is recording those sounds and inserting those sounds to bring texture and depth to the image, to make it seem more realistic to you while you're watching. And one of the things that I noticed was when Joe would gulp, first of all, his flappy chicken neck Adam's apple, a lot of people were emailing me saying that they felt that they could see what they were describing was a matte line where a visual effect of Joe Biden's face would marry up with the neck and body of an actor. And by the way, that's a very, very common technique. Facial replacement animation, as I said, it's been around for a long time. Titanic, when was that? Wasn't it maybe in the 90s? I don't remember when Titanic came out, but they used facial replacement because when they had actors running through the sinking ship, they slapped Leonardo DiCaprio's face onto a stunt person. But it's gotten much more sophisticated, you know, and particularly in a studio, something that you control where we haven't seen Joe for 5 days, if you're trying to produce 8 minutes of a visual effect shot over the course of 5 days, it's a tight schedule, but absolutely it could be done. Keep in mind, this wasn't Joe Biden transforming into, Godzilla and crushing New York City with all kinds of, disparate elements coming in from different, this is a guy sitting at a desk for 8 minutes. It would be, I don't want to say easy, but this is a relatively straightforward project for any capable visual effects company to do. And see, people are talking about a palace coup. We saw that Joe Biden was delegating presidential authority to members of his cabinet. The Secretary of State was assigned some particular responsibility. I don't have the document in front of me right now, but people were up in arms at what they said was an unconstitutional transference of executive power to the unelected Secretary of State. I mean, this is a presidential Politburo that he's appointed and assigned power. I think Congress would have to do that, right? How would that work? People who know about the Constitution can tell us, but I don't think it's a possibly not alive person. Remember, we had that whole dust up. People were saying forged Joe signature on the, what was the document? Is his document where he said he's pulling out of the race, and then they just tweeted it. So, I mean, is this an intelligence operation? I'm not saying that space aliens have resurrected Elvis and that's Joe Biden. Every single technology that I'm describing is not only available, I mean, these are, proven. Most of this stuff you could do with like open source. I mean, certainly with an Adobe subscription, After Effects. I'm sure they're using more sophisticated software than that. People say his eyes look weird, right? So that's a good comment there. Sparkmeister, how you doing? I wanted to talk about that because there was this thing on Fox. Now, I don't know who this doctor was. I don't know what they were saying, but the lack of emotion. They're saying that Joe was exhibiting a lack of emotion. Well, I don't know how many people are watching right now who, when I started talking about the uncanny valley, maybe you never heard of that before. And now that you've heard of it, it makes sense. I don't know if these doctors ever heard of it, but certainly describing a lack of emotion, it sounds like a clinical description of the uncanny valley. Because remember, maybe that's not the scene where Mr. Potato Head and the talking telephone have an emotional moment. Maybe that's someone who is so invested in the technical perfection of making it look like Joe Biden and blink the right number of times and every wrinkle in his face moving and wiggling. I don't think people have a clear understanding of the complexity of physics simulation software and soft body dynamics simulation software that could be applied to this thing. I'm not even talking, like I said, about stuff that is not widely available. These things are generally available in open source or regularly used visual effects software. So I think it's pretty likely, at the very least, that's, some manipulation of that video went on. And frankly, I think the artificial intelligence part of it would be, I think people know that you can use tools like 11 Labs, and there's many of them, where you're not sampling a sound. Sound sampling was very big in the 80s and hip-hop music, sampling sound. This is sampling the speaker, and I don't mean the electronic equipment that amplifies music, I mean the person who is speaking. You take a large enough sample of their voice, and I don't mean just minutes. You could load hours and hours and hours. Lee Stranahan did this when he had his stroke and his speech was badly impacted. It's gotten much better since then. But he took old interviews that he had done and old radio broadcasts of himself before the stroke, and he was loading it into 11 Labs, training it on his voice, building basically, it's almost like a library or a reference model of the Lee Stranahan voice. And then when he would write articles, he would put out videos with his AI voice reading it. And it was interesting to watch him do that because he was on top of that before, but he was the person who told me about 11 Labs quite a while ago. And the first time he played it for me, you know, it was good. It sounded like a very good computer simulation of Lee, but it was pretty easy to tell that it was unnatural and not Lee and just robotic. But the thing that's interesting about artificial intelligence is as Lee invested more time in it and got, you know, other shows that were newer and different venues where he was speaking, you know, not on the radio, just like recorded in a natural environment. Because like right now, I guess, I'm kind of presenting, right? So I'm almost undoubtedly speaking differently than I would if I was on the phone or something like that. So what I'm saying is you get all these different types of recordings of the person speaking and load that into this training process for the artificial intelligence. And so as time went on, Lee's computer voice reading his articles got much better. And by the way, Lee was just sort of doing this in his free time in between whatever else he was doing as far as publishing stuff on X and doing shows and all that. If you were the person working on, you know, the highest end deception like ever, you might spend, I don't know, the last 5 days or months doing all this. Oh, and the other thing is that I forgot to go into all the details of that video where he's getting onto the plane. First of all, it starts with no sound. Now, I don't know who originally released that video. I got it from some Trump Twitter account, Trump News or something like that. The official campaign Trump, it links to the Donald Trump website, and I do believe it was the official Trump Twitter something. I'm pretty sure that's this. This I think shows where I got that from. But yeah, so I'll click through and we'll see what Twitter accounts are putting that up. But the thing that strikes me as weird there is, first of all, where and when was this shot? And you might say, oh, it must be current because they're asking him about, hey, what do you think? Can Kamala Harris beat Donald Trump? So it must be recent, right? Because he's talking about how would dumb Joe know about that if this wasn't a recent video. But what I'm saying is, we certainly know that there are actors who are, you know, Joe Biden impersonators that would show up at your corporate event or whatever it might be. This is that portal to, I think, somewhere in Ireland, maybe Dublin. Anyway, we know that, damn it, I just got distracted. Ha! Somebody remind me what I was just talking about in the chat. That's ridiculous. HBAs, would I recommend? Oh, storage area solution? I don't know if I'm really qualified to recommend. I mean, for something like that, you gotta just figure out what your budget is and how much storage you need and get one that fits. If you know how to build those things, you can save a lot of money. I use Eureka, but it's kind of a not well supported. You have to be a pretty high-end user, I think, to know that. But what was I talking about before I just lost my train of thought? I came over here, I was coming over here. Oh yeah, so that's that video of Joe getting on the plane. So you could get a Joe Biden impersonator, let's say you got a really good one, and maybe if he's standing over there and he steps out of a limousine with Secret Service around him, obviously you're gonna think it's Joe Biden. So what if you had a bunch of reporters somewhere and you had a Joe Biden impersonator who looks a hell of a lot like Joe, but is 10 or 15 or 20 feet away from them, have that guy come out of the limousine. And then all the reporters will scream, oh, Mr. President, what about Kamala Harris and blah, blah, blah. Then separately, you could go and take other video of Joe that was recorded 3 months ago or who knows when, if it's, if the impersonator, or just have a fake Joe. Have somebody who looks a hell of a lot like Joe, but isn't him. You don't even need this other part that I'm talking about. But it struck me as weird that the audio starts, there's no audio, then it comes on. Then when he reaches the top of the steps, it cut audio and video and just cut to another shot head on.
Good to see you, brother. We got this.
I know.
Steps.
What is going on here?
Hey, evil Melvin. It's just the
Something weird.
You have less agency?
But it cuts when he gets to the top of the stairs, and it's a different shot. So what is that? Is that stock footage of Joe? I mean, that's the thing. Anytime you see anything weird like that, my first question is, why is this weird? Shouldn't this be just completely mundane? This idiot walks out of a car, goes up the stairs to a plane. Why do we need to cut? Now, I mean, again, I don't know exactly where that video came from. It seems to have been put out by Trump. Does he have a reason to cut around in a video of Biden? I don't know. They didn't come up with this commentary on the video, so I don't know what would motivate editing like that. Very, very strange. But it's certainly quite plausible that there could have been visual effects and artificial intelligence used in some way to enhance or modify that video we saw last night, that speech from dumb Joe Biden. I'm curious what people think about this assessment in the comments. I'm gonna have another show tonight with John Cullen. We've been working on some stuff. We didn't want to do a show last night because we didn't know what dumb Joe was gonna say, and we figure, what if he resigns from the presidency or something major? We don't want to be like doing our show in the middle of dumb Joe making dumb history. What do people think? Do we have look at the plane door and compare it with other footage? Well, I mean, that's the thing. People could go through and compare all of these things. I'm not saying that I know what's going on. I'm just saying that it's quite odd that there's just all this controversy about how stupid Joe Biden is. Actually, that's not controversial. I think most people realize Joe is stupid. It's just the controversy his stupidity creates that I'm talking about. That's sounding good, that guy with the saxophone. So what do people think? Dumb Joe VFX or real? Just don't know. And you know, the modeling of that and the rendering of that could all be using the highest end stuff that's available. I don't know. People are saying it's dead balls on. I think that means accurate. Look, I would like to do. I don't know that it needs this much attention, particularly with everything else going on, but the other thing to keep in mind is that if you did a panel with visual effects artists, some would say one thing and others would say another. There's all these shows on YouTube where visual effects artists sit around criticizing visual effects. It's like asking a lawyer what they think of another lawyer's thing. It's always gonna suck, and they're gonna rewrite it for you. But, and also just to clarify, I'm not, just a lay person here spitballing. People who are familiar with me know that I had a career in visual effects. Now, I wasn't a visual effects artist in terms of animation, but I've been a director and a cinematographer, specialized in stereoscopic 3D, and I've directed lots of animators, and so I'm very familiar with what this technology can do, even if I'm not personally qualified to operate the software to do it. I know what the capabilities are, what the limitations are, and I've spent a lot of time in my career as the specialty, camera crew for visual effects shots. What's going on here? Yeah. So again, understanding the capabilities and limitations, what can be done, and how to identify artifacts, and how to do things correctly so you don't get artifacts, it causes me to have I would say, much better than average, if not expert, understanding of these different technologies. And so I just want to put these ideas out there. There's going to be some people who hear my opinions formed from observing this evidence in the public domain. They might look at the same evidence and form a different conclusion. I'm not telling anybody what to think, and I'm not saying dumb Joe Biden is visual effects and artificial intelligence. I'm saying that it's what do people like to say? It's a non-zero probability that we saw visual effects last night. And look, the motivation would be clear. They want to, the people doing it are this illegally and unconstitutionally appointed Politburo, and they're in power now. So they don't want to relinquish power, and they have the ability, I allege, to deceive and defraud everyone. And they're going to use every tool in their kit to do that. So I think the question that this compels the average American to ask, at least for the next, what is it, 5 months? 6 months? Do we prefer artificial intelligence Joe to official stupidity Kamala Harris? Maybe. That's another reason why they would want to do this, is that if they all agree that they hate Kamala Harris and just need, X amount of time to do whatever, transit. And also, that's a big political chit. Whoever they might want to put in there, if some dummy has already been the first female president in the history of the United States, I don't think they want to bestow that honor on Kamala Harris. And imagine what would come with that. She would immediately go on display as some form of national treasure from now until the end of time. And she would be, at that point, a legitimate, even more significant historic figure. I mean, she's already the first female vice president, but being the first female president would be obviously a much more significant thing. And I think whoever is in charge of influencing these things doesn't want to allow that reward to slip away to the booby prize winner. But yeah, don't miss tonight at 7:30 another exciting episode with John Cullen. We've been doing a lot of specials since the attempt on President Trump's life. John has been figuring out all kinds of amazing things, from sound analysis and scouring the internet for photo and video evidence, and just really trying to figure out where these shots came from, how many different weapons were being fired. So much information to absorb. And there's been I was watching a little bit of this new analysis from Chris, what's his last name? That guy who's working with Mike Adams. Anyway, people know who I'm talking about. That guy, and I don't know, it seems like people are going to figure this out. At least I hope we will. So don't forget to tune in tonight. This guy's got the skull and crossbones there. Tune in tonight at 7:30. If you're not already a sponsor, make your way over there to subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsource the truth, or the most economical way to do it, for only $3 a month plus a 58-cent Odyssey fee. You can get onto Odyssey, and it helps support the show, and you're going to get access to a huge library of sponsor exclusive content. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great afternoon.